This is for the people that want to make a difference, the people that want to be on the right side of history.
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
And I get it. In today's society, it's difficult to have a political opinion and to make it be known. This can be due to fear, or maybe because you feel you don't understand what's going on.
My administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
But if he can do it, so can you. Join me every Sunday on Backstories, where we'll discuss the top political stories and how it applies to all of us. And trust me, this is not your everyday show on politics. Welcome back to Backstories, everybody. I am the host, Brandon, as always here, and happy to talk politics with you on a Sunday afternoon. So, today's episode is very packed. We got a lot to discuss, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. I want to start immediately where I left off last week's episode. In my ongoing segment called I've Come to Conclude, which is how I typically like to end all of the episodes of my show, I ended with a story about those pipe bombs that had been sent to prominent opponents of Donald Trump. Most of them were Democrats, obviously, and Democratic donors. And some of those people included President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and the former Attorney General Eric Holder. So when I reported on this story last week, all that was really known at the time was that there was approximately 13 bombs, pipe bombs, that had been sent in the United States Postal Service to these people in attempts to murder them. And I'm happy to report at this time that the individual that was responsible for creating and mailing these pipe bombs was identified and apprehended. His name is Cesar Altieri Sayoc Jr. He is a 56-year-old white male from Florida. Now, Mr. Cesar Sayoc has a very long rap sheet of several previous criminal offenses, including a previous bomb threat. He's clearly not a good criminal at all, however, because he left fingerprints on the envelope of one of the bombs that he sent out, and he left some type of DNA connection to himself that has not been clarified by the FBI. So due to his extremist behavior and idiotic, malevolent decision-making, he's now facing five federal crimes and a total of up to 48 years in prison. Here are those charges. We have count 1, which is interstate transportation of an explosive. Count 2, illegal mailing of explosive. Count 3, threats against former presidents and certain other persons. Count 4, threatening interstate communications. Count 5, assaulting federal officers. While it is great that this terrorist is being brought to justice, I want to step away from the legal ramifications and talk about the political ramifications of the actions of Cesar Sayoc, okay? The FBI is refusing to comment on the motives of his actions, but the current Attorney General decided that he was going to. The current Attorney General is Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, and this is what he had to say about Mr. Sayoc's motives. Quote, "He appears to be a partisan," end quote. To be partisan means you are one-sided in your method of thinking. You either identify or think like a conservative, or you identify and think like a liberal or a libertarian or an independent, so on and so forth, okay? Obviously, the Attorney General, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, is watering down what's going on here. Okay, you have to take into consideration the fact that Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is a Republican. So of course, he's not going to implicate any association with Mr. Sayoc being a Republican, because why would the Republican Party want to identify themselves as being associated with a pipe bomber terrorist, right? And we also know that Republicans have no relationship to the truth whatsoever at all. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that it is the divisive and racist rhetoric of the dollar store dictator, Donald Trump, that is causing the recurrent violence in this country. And Mr. Sayoc is an ardent supporter of that same dollar store dictator, Donald Trump. Okay? When the FBI apprehended Mr. Sayoc, they also apprehended his van. And for me personally, I find nothing creepier than a man driving around in this big white van all the time. And that's regardless of whatever your race is. But it's a little creepy to me. At any rate, when I saw all of these stickers that were splattered all over his van, I was a little bit more peeved out than I thought to be possible. Let's take a look at this first one. We could start with this very disgusting and scary headshot of the pumpkin himself, Donald Trump. Or maybe we can discuss this very nicely photoshopped decal stating, quote, "the swamp to be drained," end quote, which includes a list of all the common Republican complaints, including Obama's executive orders, the Black Lives Matter movement, and Hillary's deleted government emails. And then there's this beauty, this gem right here, which says, quote, "top youth soccer recruits for Trump," end quote. I'm not even going to touch that, but remember what I just said about the grown men driving vans around, and now he's top youth soccer recruit. Okay. Anyways, I want to reiterate the fact that this is a very clear identification and association with Mr. Cesar Sayoc being a Republican, and he's attacking Democrats, and that this is not the first time that the Republicans and the conservatives have attacked liberals and have started terrorist attacks, okay? Just think about Heather Heyer, for example. Think about what happened to her in Charlottesville when a white supremacist Republican ran her over simply because she was supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Or let's consider this guy, who is a current House of Representative member, a Republican from Montana named Greg Gianforte, who when he, shortly before he won his election, body slammed a reporter simply for asking him a question. Then we have those two recent attacks that just happened, the shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh and the shooting at the Kroger in Kentucky. And now I'm going to cover those after the break.
These guys don't get it. They're more focused on dictating women's personal health care decisions, like birth control, than getting our economy back on track. I'll bring people together and work with both parties without sacrificing my progressive values, like I did when I took on Governor Brewer, to stop cuts in local schools and protect children's health care. I'm Kirsten Sinema. I sponsored this ad because the only way to change Washington is to change the people we send there.
All right, we're back, and we're going to jump right back into it. On Wednesday, 10/24/2018, Gregory Bush, another white man with an extensive history of domestic violence and assault charges, committed an act of domestic terrorism. No shocker there. After being denied access to the First Baptist Church in Jefferson, Kentucky, which is a predominantly black church, he then went to Kroger instead and gunned down two innocent African Americans. Now, Greg Bush's actions has gotten him 5 charges as well, including murder and attempted murder, but the indictment did not include a hate crime charge. And the fact that it did not include a hate crime charge is very puzzling, considering the fact that many of the authorities in the area have said that this very attack was a racially motivated attack. And racially motivated attacks are supposed to be charged as a hate crime. However, the prosecutor in Kentucky said that he wasn't going to charge this as a hate crime because Kentucky's hate crime laws don't include murder. He went on to state the following, quote, "A hate crime designation only occurs when the judge makes such a determination at sentencing. If the judge finds a hate crime designation is appropriate, it doesn't add any additional time. The designation is only useful if the judge wishes to deny probation or the parole board wants to defer parole, end quote. Now, the mayor of Jeffersontown went on to say something completely different. He said that these charges were definitely going to be investigated as a hate crime because of the fact that Gregory Bush went to a bystander at the Kroger and said to him, quote, "Whites don't kill whites," end quote. And I especially love that caveat that Vox adds stating that most murders of white people are committed by white people. So as you can see from the FBI data that I'm now placing on the screen, this is indeed very true and very authentic news. 2,861 murders out of the total 3,567 murders of white people were committed by white people. And when you do the math, that equals 80%. So that is 80% of white people murders being committed by white people. Meanwhile, only 576 murders out of the total 3,567 murders of white people were committed by African Americans, which equates to a mere 16%, as in 1/6%. So clearly, whites do kill whites. And so, 3 days later, on Saturday, October 27, 2018, yet another white man committed yet another domestic terrorist attack. This man, Robert Bowers, with a known history of a desire to kill Jewish people, armed himself with an AR-15 assault rifle and 3 Glock 357 handguns, and he did just that. He walked into a synagogue. He then shouted, "All Jews must die," and he gunned down 11 Jewish people. And now, because of that, he's facing 44 federal level crimes. Here are some of the bigger ones. Counts 1 through 11, obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs resulting in death. Counts 23 through 24, obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs involving an attempt to kill and use of dangerous weapon and resulting in bodily injury. Counts 27 through 34, obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs involving an attempt to kill and use of dangerous weapons resulting in bodily injury to a public safety officer. And the rest continue to be kind of repetitive of each other. But that's not all, though. Mr. Bowers is also facing 36 state-level crimes. And 11 of those include homicide, while 13 of those include ethnic intimidation, So I'd be remiss in not pointing out to you the very fact, again, we're talking facts here, the fact that this synagogue shooting is another piece of increased violence against Jewish people. Okay? Quote, in 2017, the last year for which complete data is available, the Anti-Defamation League, an advocacy group dedicated to combating anti-Semitism, which means being anti-Jewish, found that there had been 1,986 reported anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. that year, including acts of vandalism as well as physical violence. That figure was a 57% increase from 2016, end quote. So, both of these incidents, the Kroger shooting and the shooting in the synagogue, both add to America's big problem with guns, okay? And that's due to the fact that America has ass-backwards gun laws, right? And if you don't like the fact that I said that America has ass-backwards gun laws, here are the facts. Number one, the United States, out of all the developed countries, has some of the weakest gun laws in the world, quite literally. In fact, the United States is one of the only countries that does not require background checks, simple background checks for the purchase of guns. And those that do have so many loopholes in those laws and such poor enforcement of those laws that there are, quite frankly, no barriers whatsoever in obtaining guns. Number two, there are far more guns in the United States than anywhere else in the world. According to the Small Arms Survey in 2017, there were 120.5 guns for every 100 residents, which means that in the U.S., some of us feel the need to have more than one gun to feel safe, considering that there's 120 guns for every 100 residents. Meanwhile, the country that was in second place, Yemen, only had 52.8 guns per 100 residents. And that is a full 67.7 point difference. Number three, the United States leads the world in the most homicides by gun. In 2012, there were 29.7 homicides by gun per 1 million people in the United States. And this is compared to Switzerland being in second place with just 7.7 homicides by gun per 1 million people. And that is a full 22 point difference. And again, these are facts. These are not political theories or conspiracy theories or thoughts. These are true facts, okay? And they prove that just because something is legal doesn't make it the right thing to do. And we're going to get on Donald Trump after this break.
What's impossible? The son of a bus driver becoming mayor of the capital city? Or that mayor standing up against the NRA so that guns couldn't be fired in city parks and winning? How about running for governor and being the most progressive Democrat who would invest $1 billion in education and create Medicare for all? Is it impossible to come from nothing, be outspent 10-1, and win? Share this, buy a TV ad, and prove the impossible.
All right, so now we're going to talk about Don the Con, and by that I mean Dirty Don, the liar, Donald Trump. And he just cannot help himself when it comes to lying. And I don't know whether it's more sad that he is an uncontrollable, pathological liar, or the fact that the lies that he decides to tell are such weak, baseless lies that are easy to prove as being lies. So, his first lie was the promise that there were going to be more tax cuts before the midterm elections. And more specifically, that these tax cuts were going to be for the middle class, right? Here it is.
We're going to be putting in and are studying very deeply right now, round the clock, a major tax cut for middle-income people. Not for business at all, for middle-income people. Now, the last was for middle income and for business, and our business is now coming back because of it. But we are looking at Kevin Brady's working on it. Paul Ryan is working. We're all working on it. And we're looking at a major tax cut for middle-income people who need it.
What was your time frame for that?
I would say sometime around the 1st of November, maybe a little before.
So to be fair, that lie was partially true, but mostly a lie. It was a lie because, number one, Congress is not in session. They're off battling it out in midterm elections, and therefore no laws can be passed when Congress is not in session. Now, it was partially true because there is already a tax cut that they have been working on, but it becomes a lie again when you consider the fact that their new tax cut, the Republican, they're going for another tax cut, and it's not for the middle class, it's actually for the rich people again. The newest one, should the Republicans keep the House and the Senate, will yet again, as I just said, cut the rich people's taxes. But it's going to cut them by 2%, which will equal for them around $40,180. Meanwhile, they will only cut the middle and lower class taxes by 1.1%, which will equal merely $480. The next two dirty and disgusting lies told by Dirty Donald, they came at the same time. Number one was when he said that he was going to cut birthright citizenship with the presidential executive order. And then lie number two was when he said that the United States was the only country that allowed birthright citizenship. Okay, here is that video.
Legal scholars believe you can get rid of birthright citizenship without changing the Constitution.
With an executive order.
Exactly.
Right.
Have you thought about that?
Yes.
Tell me more.
It was always told to me that you needed a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Guess
14th
what?
Amendment.
You don't.
You don't.
Number one, you don't need that. Number two,
I mean, that's in dispute.
You could definitely
That's very much in dispute.
Well, you can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. Now, how ridiculous! We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it has to end.
Have you talked about that with council?
Yeah, I have.
So where in the process?
It's in the process. It'll happen. With an executive order. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
a very
exactly what I'm
interesting
talking
question.
about.
I didn't think anybody knew that but me. I thought I was the only one. Jonathan,
I've got
I'm
a good
impressed.
guess.
So, what Don the Con is referring to is the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and that includes a citizenship clause. And that clause states the following, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside, end quote. So all of that is just a bunch of fancy legal jargon and a fancy way of saying if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States. So, here's his two lies. He lied about cutting birthright citizenship by executive order because he does not have the authority to do that even if he is the so-called president. He cannot do it. Only Congress can do such an act, and even if they did, they would have to probably go through the very complex procedure of repealing a constitutional amendment, which is far more serious and far more complex than just repealing any other law, okay? The second lie was when he said that the United States was the only country with birthright citizenship. There are indeed 30 countries in the world that have birthright citizenship. So, some people may be wondering, well, why is Donald Trump lying so much? Why is he such a terrible liar? Why is he even talking about immigration? Why is he even talking about all these other things that are going on at this present time? Well, in addition to him being the most vile and disgusting and most unpopular person in the world, he's scared right now. He's scared shitless, in fact. And that is because of the way the midterm elections are shaping up, in addition to other things that we're going to get into. First and foremost, 538 has changed the number of projected seats that the Democrats will take in the House of Representatives next week on Tuesday. Okay? The Democrats are now projected to win an average of 38 seats. And if you remember, they only need 23 to take the House. So even if they don't take all 38, they only need 23. And then there are these specific races that are scaring Don the Con. We have Democrat Stacey Abrams and a dead tie with Republican Brian Kemp for governor in Georgia, despite all of Brian Kemp's attempts to block the black vote. We have Democrat Sherrod Brown beating Republican Jim Renacci for senator in Ohio by 9 points. Democrat Andrew Gillum beating Republican Ron DeSantis for governor in Florida by 3 points. Democrat Joe Manchin beating Republican Patrick Morrisey for senator in West Virginia by 6 points. Democrat Bill Nelson beating Republican Rick Scott for senator in Florida by 2 points. Democrat Jackie Rosen beating Republican Dean Heller for senator in Nevada by 3 points. And Democrat Kristen Sinema beating Republican Martha McSally by 4 points. Everyone, please don't forget to go vote November 6th so that these Democrats can turn these projected victories into true victories and protect the country. So, the next thing that is scaring Don the Con is the same man that has been scaring him for the past 2 years now, and that is the very notable special prosecutor, Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller has Donald Trump scared beyond imagination because he is the man that is investigating Dirty Don's deeds with the Russians. Sorry, you try to write a nice talking point and you get tongue-tied sometimes. Recently, there have been many attempts to provide false allegations of sexual misconduct against the special prosecutor Robert Mueller. However, each and every one of those attempts have recently gone down in a blaze without the glory. It went down quickly and without any effect because Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller, like I said, is a notable man, and he immediately reported these instances to the FBI so that they could be handled appropriately. And then there's the fact that Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller is far more intelligent and skillful than Dirty Don could ever be, and the same goes for any of Dirty Don's blind base of supporters. Okay? So this is how it all went down. There was this 20-year-old, 20, young and very clearly dumb Trump supporter named Jacob Wall, who took to his Twitter account and suggested that on Monday, November 5th, there would be a story about sexual allegations against Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. And then there's this guy, Jack Berkman. This guy is also a Republican, and he's a lobbyist and conspiracy theorist. And speaking of, I have no idea why Republicans seem to be so just obsessed with conspiracy theories, like they just can't get over them. At any rate, there was a lady named Lorraine, right? Good old Lorraine. And she started sending emails to reporters because she was being solicited by a man claiming to work for Jack Berkman for fake accusations, for her to make up accusations against Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. They offered to pay her, pay credit card debts, and anything else that she may have. She even included the name of the man that reached out to her. So, what do you think happened? The reporters went after the man that she provided the name of, and he said that he worked for this company called Surefire Intelligence. And of course, since it is a company, one would assume that a company has a phone number, correct? So, when one does the research for this company's phone number, they track the phone number to the mother of, drumroll, you guessed it, Jacob Wall, that same young and dumb 20-year-old that started the whole thing. And what's even more sad is the fact that the website's domain, Surefire Intelligence has a website, and its domain is registered to the email of Jacob Wall. So, I really don't understand the lack of logic that is going on with these people, but thankfully this scam was exposed for the farce that it is. Well, it was. So, I'm going to come to conclude this week's episode after the break.
I know we are supposed to mind our business, especially when it comes to grown folks' business, but this is our business too.
After all, it may impact me more than it'll impact you.
Right now, my votes are limited to things like pizza or spaghetti for dinner. But you got a chance.
You get to choose people who will impact healthcare, education, prison reform,
Immigration, women's rights,
LGBTQ rights.
my rights.
The list goes on.
Not to mention a chance to make history with Stacey Abrams,
Andrew Gillum,
Antonio Delgado,
Vangelis, and more.
A chance! That's all
So do it for the kids.
The same way Dr. King,
John Lewis,
Fannie Lou Hamer, James Baldwin, Maxine Waters, and so many others did. Put your listening ears on. Vote. Vote. V-O-T-E. Vote. For me.
Because we were distracted by another extremist that was doing bad things in the name of hate.
Yeah, and then now another one. And you have all of them in a row. And, you know, we messaged about this a little bit this weekend. I keep trying to point out to people not to demonize any one group or any one ethnicity, but we keep thinking that the biggest terror threat is something else. Some people who are marching, you know, towards the border like it's imminent. And when the last time they did this, a couple hundred people came and they, you know, most of them did get into the country. Most of them got tuckered out before they even made it to the border. So we have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right. And we have to start doing something about them. There is no travel ban on them. There is no ban on, you know, they have the Muslim ban. There is no white guy ban. So what do we do about that? So, and first of all, let me just say this. Maurice Stollard is the name, and Vicki Jones, and they have been lost in all of this. Two people who were killed on Wednesday that you talked about. They have been lost about this, and I know that people feel that this story has not gotten enough coverage, and we will honor them tonight in our program. But go on, Chris. Sorry.
That was Don Lemon stating two very simple things. Number one, we shouldn't demonize any particular one group of people. And number two, that he believes that white men are the single biggest terror threat in America. While I do not agree with Don Lemon's argument on its face, I do agree with the sentiment that he was after. America is a place of many races, with many enemies, many problems, and therefore we face many threats. But we do not give enough concern or attention to a threat that has been in our face the entire time, that being white men. The media and U.S. society as a whole is quick to demonize black men or Latino people, and any minority for that matter, as criminals with ghetto backgrounds and malevolent intentions. However, whenever a white man commits a crime of similar or even greater magnitude, he's labeled a loner or someone as being affected with a mental illness. One would almost think that minorities are incapable of suffering mental illness or being loners. So yes, I do agree with Don Lemon in the sentiment that we do need to give more credence to the threats and actions of white men in this country in the same way that we do to minorities. And I don't even need to use the Pittsburgh shooting, Kentucky shooting, or the pipe bomber to make my point valid. Meet Danye Jones, a 24-year-old African American. He was found dead hanging from a tree on October 17th in St. Louis. He was hanged from a bed sheet tied around his neck with a chair found near his body. The local police have decided that they're only going to investigate this situation as a suicide. His mother is Melissa McKinney's, whom is a prominent protester in the community that helped organize the demonstrations in Ferguson following the murder of Mike Brown. She says she knows her son didn't kill himself and that she believes that this was payback for her activist work. Quote, she insisted he was upbeat, not suicidal, and did not know how to tie the type of knots used in the ligature. The sheet used did not match the family sheets, and he had packed an overnight bag which had been left on the patio, a suggestion that he trusted and had planned to leave the house with the person who killed him, she said. End quote. Danye is not the first African American to die in Missouri following the Ferguson protests. There has been an ongoing pattern of killing African Americans that are either activists in that area or they have an affiliation with the activists in that area. It all starts with DeAndre Joshua, a 20-year-old black man found shot in the head with his body lit on fire not far from his apartment in 2014. And then there's Darren Seals, a 29-year-old black man found also dead inside of a burning car after being fatally shot in 2016. Lastly, there's Edward Crawford, a 27-year-old black man also found shot dead in 2017. And in each of these cases, the police in that area have yet to turn up any suspects. While I am in no way concluding that Danye's situation is murder, I am insisting that it is highly unlikely to be suicide. Considering he left his overnight bag at the patio, his pants were pulled down, the bed sheets were not matching any of the other linen in the house, and the fact that all of the other African American protesters that have continuously been murdered lately. In my opinion, this is indeed apparent to be a lynching, like Danye's mother says it is. America is clearly a country with an ugly past and currently an ugly present. And until we have a change of culture and true change in mindset in all of us, America will never be the land of the free, but will continue to be the land of hate. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. On Facebook, you can find us at Backstories US, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at @TheBrandonDais. Okay? We're also available on YouTube, podcast, and iTunes, and you can visit our website www.backstories-us.com for more information on that. I look forward to seeing you all next week for another episode of Backstories, which will not be your everyday show on politics.